Welcome to the Growing Gorillas podcast. I'm Kisa Davison.
And I'm Travis Davison.
And this podcast is all about parenting. The ups, the downs.
The in-betweens.
We have absolutely no idea what we're doing.
But likely neither do you.
So kick back, relax, and enjoy.
Special thank you to the Cleared Hot podcast for use of the studio and Andy Stump for all of his invaluable information.
If you'd like to learn more about Cleared Hot, visit clearedhotpodcast.com.
Let's do this.
Drink LMNT. LMNT is our podcast sponsor today. It's a healthy alternative to sugary electrolyte drinks. Every grab-and-go stick pack replaces all the essential electrolytes that you need with no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, or any other junk. I drink LMNT every day, and so does Travis, to support...
Because it's delicious.
Well, I was going to say, I drink it to support my hydration. I would say my low-carb diet, my fast, my workouts, etc., but none of those things are true. I just drink it because it's good, and I need water in the morning. My favorite flavor is definitely the orange one, and the green one, and the pink one.
Yes, you're saying raspberry, orange, and lime.
Correct.
Which I don't disagree with you on. However, the watermelon is delicious.
And let's not forget the chili lime is good with tequila, as is the habanero mango, I think. The two spicy ones are really good with tequila. Not recommended in the morning, but still good with tequila.
Well, yeah, and it's kind of like, I guess, counterbalances.
Totally. It's a math equation. It works out somehow.
I don't think Rob Wolf necessarily is going to stand behind that.
I know, but he's not here, so...
That's true.
I'm the official on the subject. But listen, here's the cool part. As a member of our Growing Gorillas community, LMNT has a very, very, very cool offer for you. You can let them know that you are interested in trying out a sample pack. All you have to do is cover the cost of shipping, so you can get yours.
Which is what, like $5?
I don't know.
I think it's like $5. Anyways.
I just charge things on my credit card. I don't look at it.
Cheap.
So here's the URL. drinklmnt.com/growing-gorillas. Now remember, growing gorillas, you have to spell all the way out, and there's 2 G's right in the middle, so don't screw it up. drinklmnt.com/growing-gorillas.
And in the words of Stella Davison, hydrate or dihydrate.
I feel like LMNT should adopt that as their new
Well,
tagline.
they just did.
Okay.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Growing Gorillas podcast. Today we had a chance to sit down and talk with Tawny Haynes, who is a widow of Trooper Michael Haynes, who was struck by a drunk driver on duty and succumbed to his injuries 4 days later on March 27, 2009. She was left with 2 children, 1 and 3 at the time, to navigate the road of lone parenting while advocating for stricter D.U.I. laws across the state of Montana. She is also an assistant coach at SBG Whitefish, and she currently holds the rank of blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Okay, so Ken, this is how it works. You got to bring the microphone closer to you.
Okay. I'm here.
There we go.
See, he has a voice for radio.
That's right.
Okay.
Is it still fine?
It's good now.
Okay. Gorgeous. Well, actually, since Ken has no idea what we're doing and why we're here, I guess you could do the official intro.
I had finally gotten over not having to do the intro. So I'll give you a little just background on the podcast. So Keith and I, about 15 years ago, started a kids program, more of like a child development program with our gym, which is Growing Gorillas.
Maybe you've heard of our gym, Tawny?
I think so. Yeah, something about
So
that.
we teach kids.
I think it's on your belt, isn't it?
Yeah, that blue one that I have. Yeah.
But then Kisa had the idea, I guess it's probably more than a couple of years now. It just took me a long time to get on board. And her thought was, it would be really cool to do a podcast on parenting, because we would get so many people in the gym, because we have hundreds, as you know, kids in the gym. And almost daily, weekly, we would get parents coming up to us asking us questions about parenting as if we had the answers. Because the funny thing about kids is when they're in your class and you're not their parent, they actually listen to you. And so parents would see that and be like, hey, would you talk to them about this? Or would you talk to them about that? And so then it's like, there's not really a podcast out there about parents. And so we finally got around to doing it.
And now I think there's a lot of podcasts about parents, but none as cool as ours.
Definitely.
Correct. So
Okay.
we don't profess to have the answers. We sit down with people from all walks of life, and really ultimately is just to let parents know that, hey, nobody's got a secret recipe for this. No one's perfect at this. Everybody has struggles. And hopefully people listening can take a little solace in the fact that, you know what, I'm not the only one who struggles at this. I'm not the only one who's faced that problem or had that situation come up. And then, of course, we've all made mistakes that maybe will benefit somebody and they can avoid that mistake in their own parenting. So that's...
And my favorite thing that keeps coming up, actually, are when parents think they've made a mistake or something's really heavy on their hearts, and then come to find out that's just part of parenting. It's not really a mistake they made. That's just that's the parenting end of growing up, right?
Yeah.
That some kids just have a hard time, and it's not always our fault.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, that was
That
me.
was definitely me.
That was all me.
Well, that's just not parenting. It's also life. I mean, it's like, you take an opportunity to make a mistake, and you took it. The question is, do you learn from it?
Yeah.
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 Well, and we had my parents on for the first time.
Yesterday?
Was that yesterday?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
we've recorded like 3 in the last 3 days trying to get caught up. But, my dad was talking about the fact that, our failures actually are so necessary as far as like in order to be successful. It's like you have to make a certain amount of mistakes and have a certain number of failures before you actually get to that point where you can have some success in a particular area of your life. I think parenting is a little harder because they're actual people.
Yeah.
And when we screw up at work or school or whatever, it's a little easier to kind of
Tiptoe back out of the room.
or even a business failure. Like Keith and I's first business went out of business. But the more we started talking to other business owners and stuff like that, that's a pretty common theme. Like a lot of successful business owners have at least 1 or 2 failed businesses in their past. So
we're going to talk about parenting.
Okay.
Why don't you introduce yourself and who your kids are?
Well,
Or that you have children.
that I do have children. I have 2.
well, that's good. That's kind of a prerequisite. For
Right.
being
I
on
feel
here.
like that's kind of necessary to be on a parenting podcast. So I married a wonderful man, and we had 2 beautiful children. And he was deployed to Iraq, and he was in combat and everything else. And he came home, and we were so happy. And he went into the police academy, and he became a highway patrolman. And shortly after that, we had our son. So we had 2 kids. And when our daughter was 3.5 and our son was 16 months old, he was struck by a drunk driver on duty. And the guy was going the wrong way, like 120 miles an hour, and just hit him head on. And the other guy, he died instantly. Michael was in the hospital for 4 days before he passed. And so I have been lone parenting pretty much since then. I was married for a bit, didn't work out, but even through that, I was still pretty much raising them by myself. So,
And now your daughter is
so
16?
my daughter is 16. She just turned 16, and my son will be 14 next month. I have to say, my daughter, I did talk to her about this before I came on, but she has come out as non-binary, which has, honestly, it's really been a struggle for me because that's not something that I'm familiar with. That's not something that I have any idea what to do with. So she goes by they, them, and so it's been a bit of an adjustment for me because, like I said, I don't know, I guess you have an idea of where you think you want your kids to go, and you come to realize very early on that they are their own little people and they have their own opinions and views. And so the biggest thing for me has just been to remind her that I love her regardless. She was very scared to tell me, and
Of course.
and it kind of broke my heart that she was so scared to tell me, because I was like, you are my kid. Like, I might not agree with every decision that you make. I think that's normal as a parent. You see your kids do things and you're like, oh, no, but you kind of just have to let them do it. But my parents loved me through, a lot of mistakes that I made. And I just wanted her to know that I love her regardless, and or I love them regardless. I'm still learning the they, them.
It's an adjustment, right?
It's an adjustment. Yeah.
We've ran into it the first time through the gym, and only recently, and I'm very confused and struggle with it all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm teaching class, and it's not on purpose, and it's not mean, and it's not intentional, but it's just not. It doesn't come naturally. So you see somebody, and so you're like, she, and then they correct you, and you're like, I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Like I respect you. It's just not. It's second nature.
Right.
Yeah. It just takes a little time, and we're getting used to it. But that's kind of my newest sort of struggle. Kind of parenting.
I have and not to distract from your story, but within the last maybe few years, we have my niece is now my nephew, and one of my really good friends, her son came out as transgendered as well. And in both of those cases, prior to that actual, I guess, announcement, for lack of a better term, there was so much struggle before that. And in both of those cases, and those are really my only two experiences personally with that, or our two experiences, those kids were so depressed and struggled so much, and suicide was at the top of the mind, that in both of those scenarios, their moms were just relieved.
Yeah.
Okay. This is it. This is all we have to worry about. Okay, great. We can handle this.
It's because, I don't know, the whole lone parenting, and that's a term that I've recently come across that I've kind of latched onto as opposed to single parenting. But it's your children are they're your responsibility, and that's I never thought it was going to be easy, but you can't really prepare yourself for just how much pressure is put on you to create this, decent, productive member of society, someone that's going to contribute in a meaningful way and things like that. So, it's already hard enough with all these pressures, and then to do it by yourself, without even, an ex to take them on the weekends, or, when Michael died, it was just me. They were babies, and, Michael's family was here for a while, and, they helped, but then they moved, and, my parents live out of state, and, I moved up here, and then I chose to stay after Michael died. But it's a very different thing, I think, to be the only parent, not just one of the parents that you have once in a while. I mean, not to say that either one is easy. It's never easy being a parent, but I feel like there's another layer to it when it is just you, and I had that conversation with my son yesterday.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would be like, because it's hard enough, and Keith has done the lion's share of...
Clear your throat.
I'm trying to.
Okay.
The lion's share of the parenting up until recently, and then it kind of shifted as our children are now all adults. But
I was
And
like, deuces.
I
They're all yours.
I feel like my relationship with the kids got better, and then I felt more responsibility as they were starting to actually move out, get jobs, and build lives for themselves. But when they were little, I can't imagine like doing it by myself, or even for Keith it would have been a lot, because as you know, there's just so much. It's a full-time job.
Yeah. I've been asked before, you know, like, what is it like raising kids by yourself? And I'm like, I don't know. What's it like raising kids with somebody else?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair.
Like, I have no idea, you know. And I mean, you know, I'm not trying to like make myself out to be a martyr or anything, but it's tough. Yeah. It's really, really hard. And my kids were my whole life for years.
So you obviously survived.
Yes.
And they're still alive and functioning.
They are. For the moment.
Right. I'm sure they're doing something really stupid right now because they're teenagers, and that's what happens.
We had an incident today.
That's just part of the territory.
Please tell.
My parents don't know because I was a perfect child and a perfect teenager.
Well, me too.
Right.
I was, right?
No.
Kisa waited till she was an adult to start making mistakes.
That's not true. I started making mistakes when I was like fresh out of the womb.
Yeah.
We should have Keaton introduce himself too, because
that's
see
true.
this guy on the camera and be like, "Who's the guy?"
Sorry.
Okay. Well, my name's Ken, and I'm actually Tawny's dad. I come from a little bit different perspective in terms of child rearing, because I came from 2 failed relationships. So I have 5 daughters. 3 of my own from 2 different mothers, and then my current wife, who we've been married now for well over 30 years. She has 2 of her own. So we have hers and ours, but none together. So we have a 5 in the range now, an age of 34.
I don't think we need to get into that.
How much?
I don't think that's necessary.
They're not the oldest ones, so
I
don't
know,
worry
but
about it.
still.
And how
So
much?
anyway.
And how much do they weigh?
140 pounds.
Not
I'm
at
good
birth,
with
but
that one. Jiu-Jitsu has taught me
That
to
I
just
have no
embrace my
idea
weight.
of. But, we ran the gamut of a lot of things, because sometimes when you're parenting alone, so to speak, yes, I had maybe a significant other sometimes, not all the time, when I was alone by myself trying to raise the kids. But you're sending them back and forth between households.
Yeah.
And that in itself has its own set of problems and own set of difficulties, and can be, challenging. I know that, fortunately, my 2 formers were, for the most part, still very good friends. So we never had the antagonism between us. It just didn't work out. Period. So we said, okay, it didn't work out. Let's go. In fact, I think at her wedding was real interesting, where the photographer came up and said, "I wish all families were like your family." And she says, "This is great," because they had my 2 formers with me, and my
I love that you call them your formers.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot long time ago.
Watch your step, you're going to be my former.
No. I actually cued on something else that Ken said that I say all the time. This is my current wife. It's just like, just so they know, like, this isn't permanent, but currently this is.
I think at one point you also referred to me as your current and your ex-wife as your starter.
It was my starter marriage.
Yeah.
Like, we have to upgrade.
They're like pancakes sometimes. The first one
as you
just doesn't work out.
As you get older, you get a little more tolerant too. That works.
Like what we were talking about, failures and successes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, marriage might not be different. Like, I had a failed marriage, and now I have a successful one.
So,
Yep.
I guess another significant part of this that I feel like I have to point out, just to give some props to my own dad, although you've one-upped him, 5 girls.
Yeah.
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 My dad's got 4 and 1 lone boy.
Well, we were delightful. Don't make that face.
Well, I wish. 5 girls, female dogs. I think even the goldfish was female. I don't know. But, I was surrounded by it.
Glutton for punishment.
But it's okay.
So you probably got used to going to the store to buy tampons early on.
Yeah, sure. It was never an got for me. Bras, panties, no big deal. It's just clothing.
That's my favorite section of the store. Not the tampons.
Oh, okay. No, I was used to all that kind of stuff, and pretty much. The nice thing about it, though, is that all the kids got together, and all got along well together. In fact, they still do. It's rare when we get them all together, but when we do, it's a lot of fun. And I know that she's. Let's see, you just went and saw 3 of the 5, right?
Yeah.
Plus yourself. So it's at 4. So she just went and visited some. She missed one, and someday we'll get that going again as well. I mean, not that she hadn't seen her before, but the point is that there is no true right thing to do. There's no true wrong thing to do. You do what you do. You experience what you experience, and what I tried to, I talk with my hands a lot. What I tried to do with my kids was let them experience, but, try to make their own decisions. I mean, I'm there to help guide you. I'm not really going to be there to direct you. I won't be there all the time. And particularly when I'm only there half the time. So try to make them, realize that, okay, was that a good decision? Maybe, maybe not. We discuss.
I guess we'll find out.
We'll discuss. No, with them, we'll discuss some of the things that they did. Like, why did you do that? And if you can get them to understand and recognize that maybe that wasn't the right thing to do or the best way to do it, it's a lot better than you telling them. Because if they tell you, it usually goes in one ear and out the other.
Well, yeah.
They just don't.
Because then they've got something to fight too.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
if they want to do something, you tell them no.
Yeah.
Now they're going to fight you, and now you're the bad guy.
Arguing and negotiating is a natural child tendency.
Well, especially 14 and 16.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
14 and 16, they already know it all anyways. So they really don't need
I
your
had a
input.
sit-down conversation with my son yesterday because he told me that I only yell at him, and if I just asked him nicely to do his chores, that he would do them, and that I don't need to yell.
Did you flip the table over?
And
That's what I would have done.
I just kind of looked at him and I was like, okay, well, I don't know. We have a whole thing. You don't get screen time until your chores are done. That's just a standard rule in my house. It's always been a rule. They have to vacuum and do the dishes and take out the trash and clean their room.
No big deal.
It's not like slave labor. But yeah, he's like, you just yell at us. And I was like, well, you know what? If you had to remind somebody to do something every day for the last, 10 years, then you'd probably yell too. like what you're supposed to do. And we actually had a serious conversation about parenting, and I was like, I am trying to prepare you for the real world. Someday you're going to have a job, and your boss is not going to be there every 5 minutes to tell you what you should be doing. I said, you're going to go to work, and he's going to expect this from you, and if you don't do it, guess what? You're going to get in trouble.
Or fired.
Or
yeah,
fired.
And I'm like, yes, you're upset with me for hollering at you, which, okay, maybe I'll keep my voice down. But, you're not taking any responsibility for why I was yelling at you. Had you done your chores,
Right.
then this wouldn't have happened,
Did he get it? He's 14, so.
I think he got it, but he didn't want to admit that he got it, so he just kind of looked at me. But
I was going to say, does he sulk? Is he a sulk? Does he pout? And...
Not really. He just... he's so much like his dad. It's so weird to me. They didn't really know their dad. I mean, especially Elias. He was just a baby. But there is so much about them and their personalities and the way they react to things and the way they do things that I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's Michael.
Aren't genetics crazy?
It's a crazy thing.
How much of who you are is actually just hardwired into your DNA?
It's you just come by it honestly. There's no...
Yep.
Although there's plenty of that they learn from me. I always tell my friends, when they ask about kids, and I'm like, if you want to know what you say a lot and what you do a lot, have children.
Oh, yeah.
Because they will mimic what you say, what you do, and they see so much more than we think they do. We think we're protecting our kids from all these things.
No.
And
they
you don't.
They see more than we realize.
Yeah. That's actually one of my favorite teenage memories, and I have very few favorite memories of when my kids were teenagers, because most of them were me crying in my closet. What a terrible
I'm not the only
mom
one.
I am.
That's
No.
good.
Because they won't look for you in the closet.
Yeah.
They'll find me the second I sit on a toilet or pick up the phone. They will find me in the closet.
So do the dogs.
Yeah. But I left the house. I set them all up in the kitchen with their chores and you're making dinner together. I have to go to the gym. I run out of the house, and then I forgot something, and I went to come back into the house, into the kitchen, and Ricky was actually the leader of this song. They had made up a song about things that mom says. And then they were all chiming into these things that mom says. I was like,
So you just sit there and you're just like, oh my God.
I was like, I have to leave. I don't have time to cry in my closet.
I got things to do.
But they were so dead on with the things that mom says.
Yeah.
Yep.
My favorite one was, you don't have to help me, but you need to stay the hell out of my way.
My big one when they were really little was watching is helping.
Oh.
They'd be like, can I help? And I'm like, watching is helping, which backfired when they got older.
Right.
Because then I'd ask them to do something, and then they're like, watching is helping, Mom.
I am doing something. I'm watching you cook me dinner.
And I'm like,
I'm going to watch you make me a sandwich now.
that was a parenting fail right there.
Right. So I think any parent out there listening will probably be relieved that they're not the only ones who have problems with teenagers. And we were just talking about this recently because one of the best pieces of advice that I ever had from our pediatrician, Dr. Lisa, I want to track her down and bring her on this podcast because that woman saved my life. Actually, she saved
Our kids'
lives.
I mean, literally in one case. But
Yeah, true. But she was just thought it was so funny one day when I was hollering at the kids, and then because it was never one of them that got sick, right? It was all of them at the exact same time. So I'd have all four of them in the office, or one of them, got hurt, but I had to bring all of them in to witness, like, this is why we don't climb up ladders when we're not allowed to. This is why we don't.
Yeah.
But she said, I was hollering at them because they were toddlers. And she said, just remember, whatever you butt heads on with them as toddlers, remember that, because when they're teenagers, it'll be the exact same thing. The personality that they have as a toddler will flare up again as a teenager. And I laughed at her, and she was like, no, I'm serious. And then I gave her a look, and then she explained it. She said it's hormones.
Yeah.
Because toddlers get this surge of hormones when they're growing, and it just makes them a little crazy.
Yeah.
And then teenagers, it's the same surge of hormones, only now they talk and walk and have, some form of logic.
And they say weird things that I'm officially old now because I've had to Google some of the things that my daughter said to me. She'll text me something, and I look at Holly, and I'm like, what does this mean? She's like, I don't know. And so then we Google it. And we're like, oh, okay.
I still learn from them all the time.
Oh.
When it comes to vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I'm terrible with technology. And so the texting, all that same stuff, like the simple stuff. Even Kisa will text me stuff, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like,
IDK.
all of it. Yeah. BRB, all of that stuff. Like, I had to relearn all of it. It's
Yeah.
terrible. And same thing with the different, like, TikTok. Like, I'm not on TikTok. And then you're sharing TikTok stuff with me. I'm like, what? I don't even know what TikTok is.
Sheltered life of an old man.
Just busy working, that's all.
So, Ken, would you say that that's true, that assessment, that those personality bumps repeat themselves?
There's an easy saying: "What goes around comes around," and it's kind of like that.
Dad says that to me all the time.
Yeah.
It's so
What goes around
stupid.
comes around. It's not stupid. It's true.
It absolutely is true.
Yes. They observing. They're picking up. They're going to follow you one way or another. And if it's if you don't want them to follow a certain direction, then don't show them that direction. So, but again, I still think it's about allowing them to make their own decisions and move on, because you can't tell them what to do. They're going to resist. I mean, it's in their blood to do that. I mean, I just had her son, my grandson, for the last 3 weeks. Yeah, last 3 weeks. He stayed and traveled with us for 3 weeks. That was an experience, yeah.
He's new.
Elias.
I think he's fairly new to teenage boys.
Yeah.
That's true. You never had a teenage boy.
Yeah, teenage boy. And a teenage boy who really isn't that interested in the things I'm interested in. I mean, I was into the sports and all that kind of stuff, and he could care less. I mean, he's into the video games and the I don't know, the monsters and
He's
the
more into like Legos and
Legos
building things. And
yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah. He's probably going
Both
to
my
be
kids
an
are like
architect
that.
someday. But we had not a whole lot of common ground to talk about.
So,
but it was all right.
with the 5 kids, how many grandkids do you have now?
9. Yeah. We had two of our kids don't have any, and then she's got the 2, and the others are spread between my wife's children.
Okay.
So we got a fair, and we have boys and girls. So we at least we have a
little
fair
mix
mix
of
there.
it.
Yeah,
and
fair mix.
all my cousins were girls, and then Uncle Brian finally had one boy.
Oh yeah.
What did that poor guy do?
Yeah.
And
Well-
in fairness to Elias, they all play video games now.
Oh yeah.
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 I know.
I mean, I just got
I
done
know.
teaching the teens
Yeah.
across the street, and it's like, it's just like part of their life.
Yeah.
Like all of them, they all play video games.
I think the students in my class were like, first of all, they were just blown away that I even had kids. They're like, "You have children?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got 2 of them." But then when they're talking about things, and I'm like, "Oh yeah," like, and then I'm able to kind of relate to them.
Yeah.
Their eyes just kind of light up, like,
How do you know about this?
Right.
like you're old, you're not supposed to know what this means, But yeah, no, the kids.
Tawny,
kids are
you
great.
you do work at the high school too, or just with the Heart Locker?
Oh, with the Heart Locker, yes.
Okay, so
I do.
not necessarily interacting with the kids, but
No.
supporting that. What got you? Well, you might explain a little bit for
Okay.
everybody what Heart Locker is and why did you get involved in it?
Well, so when I had my daughter, I was fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home mom. And then after Michael passed, I was still able to stay home with them, which was great. Like, I loved being home with my kids. But as any stay-at-home mother will tell you, you go a little crazy because you're only
Right.
watching the same 4 movies all day long. And, so I didn't really want to get a job, but I wanted something out of the house. I wanted something that I could contribute to, something that I could kind of do. And I did some other volunteer work for a while, but it just wasn't really a good fit. And then my daughter, my child, mentioned the Heart Locker. She had a friend that was
They.
I'm sorry. That's lifelong battle there. I
Right.
think they have a friend that we're utilizing some of those services, and I just thought, I think that would be something that I could contribute to. I felt like that would be a good fit for me, so I went down there, and I just started working in the office one day a week, and it was staggering to hear those statistics and just see how many homeless students we had in this valley. So the Heart Locker is basically, we provide resources and clothing and food for the homeless
I love it.
students, the homeless students in our valley, which again our valley's not really that big.
No.
I mean, really it's not, but there are hundreds of students.
Well, unfortunately, they closed it, so no one else can move here right now. So I think it's as big as it's going to get.
I hope so.
I guess
true.
not.
But yeah, it just broke my heart to hear about these families living in motel rooms, or living in their cars, or students living in their cars, or just jumping from like
Couch
one
to
friend's house
couch,
to
yeah.
another friend's house, and it's just heartbreaking.
So the resources are everything from, as I understand, everything from like backpacks and coats and shoes and all that to also like basic hygiene and
Yes. So we
school
also we
supplies.
provide items as far as clothing and hygiene and things like that. But we also connect students and families with different resources in the valley, or different programs that they can use, or like Habitat for Humanity and all these
Gotcha.
different things, just helping them kind of plug in, because a lot of those things, there's a lot of red tape, like a lot, trying to access these services. Like, there are a lot of really great things out there, but many of them are just so hard to get access to.
A lot of times, the people that need them the most are the least sophisticated
Yeah.
in the community as well. And so,
Yeah. So we try to help them navigate some of those things.
And I would imagine not even just that, but also if I'm worried about going to school all day and I'm worried about where am I going to sleep at night,
Yeah.
maybe the last thing I'm going to worry about is what organizations are out there that can help me, or what,
Yeah.
how can I plug into public services, or all that. You just you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so that's why I really love the Heart Locker, because I feel like I'm making a difference, like I'm actually helping people. So that's been a great thing that I've started doing, and I've been doing that a couple years now, and it's just been great.
awesome.
Yeah.
it's been quite a few years since the gyms actually contributed to that, because I don't know if you remember, but we did a big drive for Heart Locker. Should probably do that again.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. Yeah.
Okay, well, It's on.
I think I know someone we can probably make that happen.
I know.
Well, I just found out recently. I have I won't mention names and stuff, but one of our other coaches in our sales meeting was talking to me, and we started scholarshiping this kid, which we don't do very often because it always backfires. It's always been our experience that the people that we scholarship end up being like the most work. The people who don't pay end up actually causing more problems than the people that are paying full price.
Yeah, the long-term scholarships. There's some short-term, like, we're just in a state of hardship that, of course.
But in this particular case, a coach brought up to me, she's like, well, him and his mom are living in a tent right now. And I was just like, so foreign, right? Like, that's so far from where I've ever been to try to think about like a mother and her young son, like sleeping in a tent.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Yeah, it just breaks my heart, which I think is why I love coaching also, because it's, I don't know, I feel like everybody I guess has their own presence on the mat, but I think I come on there with a little bit of a mothering kind of, you kind of tease them a little bit, but you also let them know that you're investing in them and that you care about them, and also trying to kind of guide them. And it's, I don't know, I like being able to give back in ways that you can see. I mean, it's, it's always good to give back, but a lot of times you don't necessarily get to see those things. You don't get to reap the rewards necessarily.
Tawny has the best technique for teaching shrimps to spider monkeys that I've ever seen. And now, of course, that I've said that, Kate's going to listen to this, and she's going to be like...
Kate already gets upset when I talk about my micro monkeys class compared to hers. So
she had a micro monkey pee on the mat today, so...
Oh, no.
We call that a code yellow. Yeah. Which is better than a code brown, by the way.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like
Code brown is my class.
Something I just realized, and it's just coincidence, that my parents were on yesterday. But my mom was widowed when I was just less than 2 years old, and she was pregnant with my brother. And my dad was at work as well, and it was just, went from... So I never put that together. Like, I knew, because I met you through Nelson, and so I kind of knew your story and stuff, but it hadn't dawned on me until we're just sitting here just now and hearing my mom talk about, all of a sudden it's just her, me, and then...
I actually made that connection because we moved to the Valley, and shortly after that was when Michael died. And it was everywhere.
Yeah, we knew the story.
It was everywhere. And I had just taken the kids to the bowling alley 2 weeks prior to that. And so it was to be, we moved here and we didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
Like, we had no family, no friends. So the newspaper was my best friend.
Yeah.
I felt like I started to get to know everyone. And when that happened, my first thought was, oh my gosh, that's exactly what happened to my mother-in-law. Yeah. So full circle on the relationship. But that kind of trauma, we're talking about it specific to parenting, but you were how old?
When he died?
Yeah.
31.
And to have these two babies, and that's trauma.
It is, and I don't know, my biggest fear, obviously it was this horrific thing that, I was just sleepwalking for months really afterwards, but the kids were so little, and I remember going to the hospital. I had a trooper come to the house and you need to come to the hospital right away. And so one of them stayed with the kids, and we just ran code to the hospital, and the doctor took us into the room, and because Michael's parents were there, and we sat down, and I feel like when they take you into a room, you kind of know, but I was still hopeful, and then we sat down, and the doctor was like, he, started coding this morning, and we did everything we could, and then honestly, I don't remember anything after that. I remember him talking and just sitting there, and all I could think was, how am I supposed to go home and tell my babies that their dad is gone? Like,
Yeah.
they didn't even know he was in the hospital.
No, because they're babies.
They were so little, and Rowan, my daughter goes by Rowan now, or my oldest child goes by Rowan now. But they just didn't understand, and so I was just like, dad's at work, and I wasn't even able to process at that point, because we didn't know what was going to happen. He was in a coma, and I didn't want to take them to see him,
Of course not.
like that, because it was awful. He'd broken both of his legs and his arm, and but after the doctor told me that, I was like, what do I do? What do I tell my children? And we believe in God, and we're Christians, and so for me I made the distinction, at least with my daughter, with my oldest child. My son, he was just a baby, and so he had no idea. But I told them that that Daddy's body had died, that that we live in this house, but we are not this house. This house is just where we live. And someday we'll move and we'll go to another house, but this house, will still be here. And so I was like, Daddy's soul went to heaven. So his body is still here, but who Daddy is in heaven. And just kind of like, okay, just 3.5. So just like, okay. And then I had to make that decision of the viewing, and do I take them to say goodbye? Do I, I didn't want him to just be gone.
Right.
And have, Daddy's just not here anymore. And so I decided to take Rowan, and that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life.
How did she react?
Well, I asked her. I said, Daddy's body is, at this place. We can go. I can take you to say goodbye. And I said he's going to look like he's sleeping, but he's not going to wake up. And I said, just remember that this is just his body. I said, who he is in heaven. This is just the house that he used to live in. And I said, but if you want to go say goodbye, I will take you. And she looks up at me with these big brown eyes, and she's like, I want to say bye to Daddy. And so I was like, okay. And I took her in, and we're, he's in the casket at the front of the funeral home, and I'm carrying her, walking her down the aisle, and it was the first time I had seen him since he passed. And there's sitting there with the casket and the flag over it, and the honor guard is there, and I took her up to him, and she just kind of held on to me, and she looked at him, and she blew him a kiss, and she said, I love you, Daddy. And then she just said bye. And then she just kind of looked at me, and I said, do you want to go? And she's like, not yet. And so we just sat there for probably 5 minutes, and she just looked at him. And in that moment, I'm like, was this a mistake? Should I not have,
Right. How do you know?
I don't want her to remember him that way. But again, it was one of those things where you don't know what the right thing is. I didn't want to not give her the opportunity to say goodbye, but then I was afraid to give her the opportunity to say goodbye. And I don't think she really even remembers that. But it is something that has absolutely stuck with me. And I think in that moment was when I realized I'm going to do this all by myself. Every decision, like, I didn't have, I mean, my family was there, but this was my decision. This was my choice. Like, I didn't have anybody to be like, what do you think about this? Or, you know, how do you feel about that? Or, you know, it was like these children were my responsibility. I was all that they had. You know, so it's, everything takes on a new meaning when you lose somebody in that way. You know, you get your affairs in order. You know, I drew up a will, and, you know, I have all my trust stuff figured out, and it just changes your perspective. Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
How, after that, I mean, obviously that might have been, that certainly undoubtedly was the hardest thing that I'm sure you did as a parent.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there were a lot of maybe less hard things that you still had to do on your own.
Yeah.
And so how did you get through that? I mean, who did you consult? Did you build a network? Did you turn to God? Did you, like, what was
I had always been,
what was your system?
I became a Christian when I was in 8th grade. You know, I was, you know, 13 years old, and so that's always been a very big part of my life. So honestly, I really think the only thing that got me through that was knowing that I will see him again, you know, and that he's not just gone. You know, I believe that with my whole heart. And, you know, I don't know how people go through things like this when they don't have that hope. You know, it made all the difference for me, because it was a really, really dark time for me. It was, you know, we'd been married for 5 years and 12 days when he died. And, you know, 2.5 years of that, he was either deployed in Iraq or he was in the police academy. So we really didn't even have that much time together, you know. And
just enough to make 2 children.
Yes, we made time for that. But
that's also very similar to my mom's experience.
It's such a, it was the worst feeling, because it was just, you had no control over anything. You know, it's like all I wanted was just to rewind and just have him back. And, you know, you relive those moments and, you know, that night and things like that over and over and over again. And, but I had my children. And honestly, there were times when it was real hard. It was real hard. And I just wanted to be done. I was like, I just can't. Like, he was amazing. And he loved me, and he loved our kids. And
you posted that video on Facebook not long ago of a hike you guys did up at Lone Pine.
yeah.
And that was, I mean, it was a tearjerker because it was so joyful.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that, thinking to myself, gosh, so many good times, like so much joy. I hope she remembers that joy. I hope she remembers that love. And then it was a good check for me too. Do I remember the joyful times? Do I remember, you know, the love? Do I remember those? Because we can become so overshadowed with the last worst thing and forget about, you know, maybe even why that's so painful, because there was so much joy and was so much love.
Yeah.
And I think what you said too about, it's kind of cliche, right? Like, this might be the last time you see him. This might be, because I hear this from my mom all the time. You know, this might be the last time you see him. And my mom's really good about, like, if she thinks about you, then she calls you.
Yeah.
Which is why I talk to my mother-in-law 5 times a day.
because she knows, like, everyone talks about how we don't have control and that, you know, things change in the blink of an eye. And we all talk about it and we say it. But you experienced it.
Yeah.
My mom experienced it. And I hope that we can all kind of really get our head around that we really don't have control, and that things do change really quickly, and it might be the last time. Like she didn't know, like when my dad left for work that morning, like she didn't know that it would be the last time that she kissed him or said I love you. Or
And she was actually really grumpy, she told me, because you had been, it was your fault, basically.
Of course, everything's my fault.
You had an ear infection or something, or a cold. I think it was an ear infection, and been up all night. So she'd finally just gotten you to sleep, and he went to go kiss you and say goodbye. And she was all short and grumpy with him. Like,
he would
don't wake him up.
He would say goodbye to me every morning before he went to work, and so.
It completely changes your perspective on life and how you deal with things. I'm a real big believer in letting people know that you love them and that you care about them.
Yeah.
That's her thing too.
Because it's like I'd experienced, like you said, like that anytime you see them could be the last time you see them. And every time before he went to work, I would tell him, I love you and be safe. And the last day that I was with him in the hospital, because I would go and I would sit with him and I would talk to him, and when I was in there talking to him, like his cranial pressure would go down. So I knew that he knew I was there. But the very last thing I told him was, I love you and be safe. Or I said, I love you and don't give the nurses any trouble. That was the last thing I said. But I don't know. I guess when you've experienced something like that, like, that life is so short. And so with my kids, I try to remind them, like, do the things that you love and don't wait, and like, don't wait for tomorrow to do something. Don't wait until next year or wait until you're ready, because you're never really going to be ready.
Especially your chores.
Yes, don't wait on your chores. That's a bad idea.
Don't make me yell at you.
Don't make me yell at you.
I will holler all night.
Yes. Yeah. But it's, I don't know. I've tried to take the things that I've learned, because I've been through, everybody's been through a lot. I think if you really sit down and talk to anybody about their whole story,
so true.
You're just like, what? Like, so you have no idea what people have been through.
Yeah, no one gets an easy pass.
No, but I try to take the things that have happened to me and the lessons that I've learned, and I have a lot of really honest, open conversations with my children. If I make a mistake or I mess up, I will go right to them and be like, look, I'm sorry. Like, I completely lost my, back there. Like, I apologize.
You can cuss on this podcast, by the way.
Kisa does all the time. In fact, this is the first podcast that she hasn't cussed so
I
far.
think Anna Marie and I referred to our children as, I don't know if it was shitheads or fucktards or something really ridiculous.
There have definitely
like
been times when my children have gotten out of the car when I take them to school. She just made a point of
cussing so she didn't break her record of
I know.
always cussing.
Every podcast was cussed. What is today?
Honestly, I feel like, are you even a mother or are you even a parent if you haven't at some point just been like,
flipped a table?
Such a little shit right now. Like, right. There have been plenty of times when my daughter's gotten out of the car after I take her to school, and I'm just like,
right. And then you tuck them into bed at night, or wait till they go to sleep and you peek in and go, but I love you.
Yeah. And then after school, it's like, oh, they'll give me a hug, and I'm like, oh, and then 5 minutes later, it's like, can you empty the dishwasher? I always have to empty the dishwasher.
You're so good at it.
And I'm like, oh, there you are. That's right.
And then my other tactic is, you're so good at it. And then the flip side to that is, you just need more practice. You're not very good at it at all. You just need more practice.
Well, and I'm really bad about that because, and I think my dad will attest to this, I was always really pretty organized when I was a kid. Like, I liked having things where they went. Not all the time, but I think most of the time, like, I like to keep my room pretty clean, and and
your stuff,
my stuff, yes. But I've always kind of been that way, but my children are definitely not that way, like, at all, and it's so hard. Like, I don't even know, like I don't understand. Like, I go into my daughter's or my eldest child's room, and I'm looking around, and I'm not even kidding. It's drawings everywhere and lights hung up and clothes all over the floor, and there's a tiny little sort of path from the door to the bathroom to her
Doesn't
bed.
that just drive you nuts?
And I am like, how? I can't, like, it gives me
Right.
anxiety. And so I just leave and I just shut the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I just tell them, just
That sounds like Joe's bedroom.
once it starts, like once I walk down the hall and I can smell it,
Right.
then I'm like, okay, which is getting worse as they get older,
I-
by the way.
let me-
What is going on with the teenage
Oh man.
Smell?
Like,
The boys especially.
I buy all the stuff. I'm like, all these, I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I
I'm
know.
like, I'm sure, like, I probably didn't smell wonderful as a teenager either, but I feel like I at least made an effort.
Right. You tried.
And I really feel like he's not.
Okay, let me
even
tell you
trying
what.
a little bit.
Let me tell you what not to do. I made this mistake with Joe, and I'm proud of the fact that it was only with Joe. But maybe Joe was the one I was going to make the mistake with, because same thing, pathway.
Yeah, he has
He's
piles of dirty clothes in his bathroom, in his bedroom, like
on the floor, and I made the mistake of telling him, if you take your dirty clothes to the laundry room, I will wash them. Never say that.
My kids have been doing their own laundry for like 5 years. So
So I changed the laundry today, by the way, because I have a trip coming up, and so I have to pack tonight. And I was like,
Where the heck?
why am I like with this whole pile of clothing? Like my underwear aren't in here. It's all Joe's. Like, why am I doing my 18-year-old son's laundry?
Because I've never made the children do their own laundry.
oh,
I admitted it publicly.
That was a big one for me. I was like, and they have a day. They each have their own day, and they're supposed to do all their clothes and their towels and their bedding.
Does it work?
That's such a good idea. Such a good idea.
It works with their clothes.
But
They
not the
don't
towels and
always
bedding.
wash their bedding.
Oh, bedding is what smells, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
I just bought new bedding. I just buy
Some of
him
that
new
shit
bedding.
just needs to get burned.
Yeah. I was like, there's not enough OxyClean in the world that's gonna.
We're gonna burn it.
It's like-
the
it's like a
EPA is gonna knock on your door and be like, "Ma'am, there's a toxic cloud over your son's
but
bedroom."
seriously, like, I don't understand. Like, I love my kids, but I am like, do you not like? How can you not tell?
Smell yourself.
It's their smell, though.
I know.
But it's so bad.
It's so bad.
I don't know. I'm sorry. That's
that's
like
I train with a lot of people who I'm like, do you realize how bad you smell?
yeah.
But they don't.
No.
Just everyone else does.
And like that I understand. Like when you're rolling with somebody, you're at open mat, there are some people where it's like, okay, I'm going to roll with you and you first before you've been rolling for a
Before
while.
you start sweating.
Yeah.
Yes. But I feel like that's acceptable because you're active. Like they will step out of the shower and 10 minutes later walk
I
by me and
know.
I'm like, what I'm like, you have to wash all your parts, right? And he's like, I know.
Oh, God.
All your parts.
We have that. Oh, God.
My favorite too
Hey,
is
did you shower? Yeah.
Yeah, I showered.
And I'm like, did you
Use soap?
Right.
On your body?
Yeah. And I'm like, not just like,
You
like
realize-
your arms, like
You know where the stinky parts are, right?
Right.
Like there's
In
between your legs and in between your arms.
my
Like
son's gonna kill me. But yeah, I'm like,
I tell him
all
this.
of your parts, like
Yeah.
they're yours. You should wash
Yeah.
them.
I had to get very specific with Ted, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's missing part of his brain.
Mm-hmm.
And not that that's an excuse, but you have to be very specific.
Mm-hmm.
First, you wash your face,
Mm-hmm.
then your armpits,
Yeah.
then your balls,
Mm-hmm.
and then your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Just those 4 things.
Oh,
Yeah.
and
2,
wash your
3,
hair too.
4. Oh, yeah.
Sometimes
Well,
you get out
then
of the shower and I'm looking at the hair and I'm like, dude, your hair is a disaster up there.
I know.
Like,
Did you just change the oil in it? And that's what my dad used to say to us. Did you wash it or just change the oil?
Oh man. Yeah. I don't know.
but-
There's-
so
and
you're
then-
not alone. They all stink.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
yeah.
But I feel like that's also, I mean, that's part of our job, right? As parents of teens, is to teach them how to do those things.
Yeah. And one thing that I've really struggled with, so, when I was growing up, everyone was very materialistic. It was like you had to have Guess jeans and you had to have, certain shoes and all
I
the
secretly miss Guess jeans with the zipper on the bottom.
things. Right. So cute.
I know. Super
Newsflash,
cute.
everyone's still very materialistic.
Well-
it's just a different brand.
It's different now, but but I was bullied in middle school and high school because, we didn't have a ton of money. I mean, I always had everything I needed, but, I didn't always have the right shoes or the right jeans. And it's really interesting to me how that has carried through adulthood and into my children. Like, I always make sure that my kids have like nice jeans, and I realize it doesn't matter, but somewhere inside of me, I'm like, I'm not going to give these kids any reason to make fun of my kids or to, so I'm going to make sure that they have nice clothes and that they're clean. And my kids, I swear, are just doing everything possible to like
sabotage your efforts.
Yes. I don't understand. Like, so Rowan has their very own style. Very unique. Mm-hmm. The birthday list that she sends out or the Christmas list she sends out, I'm looking at it and I'm like, no.
Can't do it. I can't do it.
Not happening. That's I just can't. I just can't.
I can't even.
So I picked the least offensive things on the list to me, but it's they're just their own little people, and what they want is what they want, and you just kind of have to let them do it. But it's hard because like Rowan does not care about their hair or what they're wearing, or it's just like whatever, like I'm just gonna go to school, and they come out in the morning and I'm like, what is this what we're gonna wear? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. All right. And for a long time I was like, you can't wear that, I'm sorry, you just can't, like you have to comb your hair, you have to all these things, and I realized I was being the bully. Like I was the one pointing out,
imposing
what they were wearing, and I was just like, oh my gosh, and then of course it's crushing because this is my child and I'm supposed to be supportive and loving, and I'm like, you can't wear your hair like that. Can you brush your hair, please? Change your shirt, or you can't wear those pants, or and I think that just kind of runs through my head when I'm dealing with them now, because there are things that I'm like, if this had happened when I was in school, like that would have been a real bad day.
You could our niece Bailey is 19.
Gonna be 19.
Yeah, she'll be 19 on the 24th. And when she was like 4, she's the same age as all of our kids. And I would go over to Emily's house, her mom's house. And so Emily and I were like,
my sister.
Yeah. Okay. His baby sister. We were co-parents of our 6 children. And I would go over, and Bailey would meet me at the front door with her like perfect little outfit and her perfect little, just very, and I would show up in like whatever, sweats and a ponytail because I'm going to work, or I'm going to go clean or whatever. And she would say, oh, hi, Auntie. And then she would look me up and down and go, do you like what you're wearing today?
Do you like your hair like that?
Do you like your hair like that? I was like, listen, you little brat. I will not be bullied by a 4-year-old. I will take your ponytail and choke you. But so you could always use that passive aggressive bullying method if you really want.
Right.
But it's a good point. Like, want to give them the space to have their own personalities and find their way and make their own mistakes, and yet at the same time protect them from the cruel world.
Yeah. Well, and what I really love about Rowan is that I was very insecure in middle school. I was very aware of other people's opinions and what they liked and what they were doing, and was I being cool enough, and what am I, and for her it's like literally like
empty pockets.
She does not care.
Right.
She does not care. And she's very like when they were in school and the girls were like, well, if you're not going to play with us.
You're going to be so busted if they listen to this podcast and you screwed up the pronouns so many times.
Rowan's going to keep count.
She is. They are.
Ow!
They better not, because it's a learning process.
It is a learning process.
Everybody.
And I would hope Rowan's giving you grace.
I think they understand
that
that it's hard.
yeah.
You know,
For everybody.
It is. And, you know, it's not that I'm trying to be disrespectful in any way.
or that there's a lack of love or
No, it's
understanding or
just-
anything. It's just habit.
It's something that's new, and
Yep.
I feel like I catch myself most of the time.
Right.
But, you know, I still struggle. I still struggle with that. But
Okay.
doing my best.
Well, we always end with 4 important questions.
Okay.
The first question is my favorite question.
Mm-hmm.
If you could pick a theme song for your life as a parent, what would it be?
Ken, you better start thinking too, because you're gonna have to answer
Yeah,
these
you're
questions as well.
So I always think of DMX.
Y'all gonna make me lose
yes.
my mind.
That's my theme song. Because I literally sing that song pretty much every day.
I'm gonna have to get it up top of that.
Yeah.
That is
Yes.
my theme song.
Yeah. And sometimes I actually sing it
Oh, yeah.
for them,
Kisa-
and they
Kisa
just kind
sings it
of
all the time.
Yeah.
they just kind of look at me, and then I'm like dancing in the kitchen, which they love, by the way.
I'm
like, do you want me
sure.
to go to your next school dance? I could just kind of. And Elias is like,
No.
mother.
All right, Ken, you're up.
Well, I don't know about parenting, but I kind of I've always like lived my life in a way like live like you were dying. Because, you know, don't wait around for things to happen to you. Make them happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you're wrong, you're wrong. You know, live on, move on, live from it, keep going.
Perfect.
You know, just be accountable for what you do and what you say, but, you know, go for it.
Okay, so
I messed the order of these up, so you get to do this.
okay. Low point in parenting as far as you know, we all obviously make mistakes, and we know it most of the time. Like most of the time we're like, oh shit, like I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have done that. You most of us are self-correcting, right?
You
Like
want to
we're-
mulligan. You want to just hit that shot one more time.
Right. So if you had to pick one, and obviously we all have multiple, but if there was one moment where you thought to yourself, man, I really blew it with my kid or my kids in this particular instance, what would it be?
There's so many.
There's so many.
I think the one that comes to mind is when Rowan first came to me a couple years ago and asked to see a counselor. And, you know, she's like, they were saying that, you know, I'm just moody and I'm tired and I don't want to, and I'm like, okay, well, you sound like a teenager, you know, and so I didn't make an appointment right away, and I I didn't take that seriously. I think part of me was just scared of what all of that meant, and I was kind of just hoping it would go away, which it didn't. And then later on down the road, when I'd had conversations with Rowan, they were saying that they had trouble trusting me because they opened up and they asked for help, and I didn't get it for them, and that was hard to hear. That was a big parenting fail, I think, for me. Is I was scared of what that meant, and but honestly, I was like, I mean, you kind of just sound like you're being a teenager. You don't really want to do things, you know. And hindsight, I should have made an appointment and done that, and so that's probably one of the biggest things that I can think of that I wish I could do over again.
Ken?
Not off the hook.
You can't slink down?
No.
Well, I had a real problem with one of her half-sisters when she was younger. And this is back when she was like 12, 13. Not even 13, 12, I guess. And she was heavily into drugs. And she was going to be our kid that was either going to go to jail and die or die before she got to jail. But both of those were in her future. And, you know, you tear yourself apart thinking, okay, what did I do wrong? What did I go wrong? And it's all about me, right? All about me or my wife at the time, and all about us as parents. What did we do wrong? And instead of just realizing, well, she just needs help. Okay, so we were trying to do all the things and tell her everything to do. Do this, don't do that. Try to isolate her from that element that she was running around with. And of course, as soon as you do that, she just resisted more and more and more and got deeper and deeper and deeper. So finally, we actually sent her to a program. And that was, you second guess yourself all the time when you do that. So it turns out for her, it worked out very, very well. But the going there, I mean, when you're taking her there and she's yelling and screaming at you, fuck this, you and this, I'm going to get you, and throwing the bird at you and all this other business. And this is a 12-year-old, my kid, screaming at me. Like, oh, God, what did I do wrong? What did I do? How do I get around this? And you try to sit there and say, you're sorry. Well, really, I'm not sorry. I'm trying to do what's best for you, I think. Luckily, it all worked out because this particular program just didn't treat the child issue. It treated the whole family, including her. She got involved as well. But it comes back, and it really taught us a lot about why kids go down this road sometimes, and how that you can hopefully redirect them without pushing them. So that's why I don't tend to get very, very pushy anymore. Whereas before I used to. I used to try to push them. I used to try to make them into a mini-me, And no, you can't make them into mini-yous. They're their own personality. They're their own kids. They're their own peoples. And they're going to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And it may not necessarily be what you want to do when you want them to do it. But hopefully you handle that and you can discuss with them and you can talk about it later and you can laugh about it. But yeah, it was that was a real low moment of time to see her driving away with two almost in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Two people that we didn't know. So
we get to follow that up with a high point. Just so
good.
you know.
Yeah, we don't like to end with
that program I talked about did the same thing too. They always follow the low points with a high point.
Yeah. Right?
That's the
Praise
way.
correct.
Listen,
Praise.
yeah.
Right, exactly. Shit sandwich.
Yes. Wow, high point.
So this would be a high point where also you go to bed that night and you're like, damn, where's my trophy? It's like, I
nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think again with Rowan, and I know I'm mentioning Rowan a lot more than Elias, but he's been pretty mild so far. I think, Rowan has really thrown me right into the thick of it. But when they kind of came out to me and it's something, again, that I've always struggled with, is just that concept. I've been very kind of black and white, raised in a Christian, well, not necessarily raised in a Christian home, but, that was my belief. That's what I believed in. That's how I lived my life. And so to have your child kind of come out with something that's contrary to kind of the foundation of how you live your life is, it's a really hard thing. But honestly, I was rather proud of how I handled that. In that, I know there's a lot of people that don't get reassurance and comfort and, support in that moment. And it feels really weird to say that, but I was really proud of how I handled that, because I wanted to make sure that they knew that I love them. Like, whatever they do in life, wherever they go, I was like, if you get mad at me and you leave and, we don't talk for 10 years, I said, if you find yourself somewhere and you don't want to be there and you call me, I will come get you. Like, I will always be your mother. I will always be here. And, they just started crying. And it makes me sad that there's so many people that don't get that kind of response, but I was happy that I was able to give that to them and give it to them honestly. It wasn't okay, well, this is what I'm supposed to say. It was, my love for them did not change. And not that I thought it would, but I don't know. I was proud of how I'd handled that, because I felt like I was like, okay, like, I'm not a complete screw up as a parent.
So Rowan, if you're listening, give your mom a pass about the pronouns.
Right.
not as important as what she just said.
Right. You don't have to give her a trophy. She'll find one for herself.
Yeah.
Okay, Ken, high point.
Well, I'll go with two of them. There's one with the same daughter who I was having all those difficulties with. I mean, she was in that program for 2.5, 3 years. So she was 15. But when she came out, she still a teenager, still not what you'd want to say the model child type of thing. But later in life, she's in her 20s, and it was just her. She came up to me and said, "Dad, I want to thank you." She says, what you and Mom did was exactly what I needed. And I'm so glad that I went, because otherwise I would probably be dead or something. And I said, got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Okay. And then there was an interesting time, too, with her. She wasn't too old. She was about four or so, and we took her to a boat show, my brother and I. My brother, who did not have kids at the time, he now has 3. Grown, but they have 3. And she was just all over the place, just having a great time, and I was having a great time with her, and we were flailing around, and I can remember her going into these boats and looking through the portholes and laughing at us and this and that, and I'm laughing back at her. And afterwards my brother says, I never realized how much fun it is to be with a little kid. Oh, yeah. Well, we brought her along, right? We did everything there. So,
See, I
that
was
good.
delightful.
Yeah, delightful.
That particular day, yeah.
All right. Final question, because I know everybody's hungry. Gold nugget. So it could be some piece of advice that was given to you from somebody. It could be something you read. It could be something you experienced. But if you had one piece of advice to give to current parents, future parents, what would it be?
I mean, I don't feel like it's particularly original, but it's kind of a pick your battles sort of thing. Like my thing is, when I'm arguing with my kids about something, it's like, okay, is this the mountain that I want to die on? Mm-hmm. Is this what I want to put so much energy into, like the rooms? It literally will drive me insane if I think about their rooms being so messy. So rather than arguing with them about it every day, just close the door. I just close the door, and then every month or so we go in, and I'm like, okay, like, you really need to take care of this. But they're like, you can't argue about everything. Everything can't be an issue,
right?
So you have to pick your battles. You have to kind of say, okay, is this really going to matter in a year, in 5 years? Probably not.
I could have used that advice a few million times.
I try to not make everything an issue. There are certain things that I definitely, am strict about, and things that I will die on that mountain. But there are a lot of things where it's like, what, it's not worth the argument. It's not worth it at this point. So
it's good.
I don't know. That's all I got.
I like it. Ken?
Well, to piggyback on that, it's like, you pick your battles, but also don't be afraid to make a mistake. I mean, we don't have all the answers. Most of the time, we don't have any of it. We just kind of live as we go. Yeah. But if you're afraid to make a mistake with your child, then they're going to pick up on that. Because secretly, they'll never admit it, but they want direction, they want guidance, but they want to be able to assimilate it in their own way. And it's not going to necessarily be the way that you think it's going to be, but that doesn't mean you should stop.
Yeah.
Or you just don't be afraid to make the mistake. Just keep going on it. Just for her, don't harp. Don't battle every mountain, because it'll drive you nuts and insane, and it's not worth it.
Yeah, and own it when you make a mistake.
Yeah. That's right. Because you have to own it when you make a mistake. You have to take accountability for when you make that mistake, but move on.
Yeah.
I took the opportunity to make a decision. I made a mistake. Well, okay, but at least I did it. Now move on, learn. And that's why I try to teach my kids to try to do the same thing. You're not going to be right all the time. You're not going to be perfect. There's no such thing as perfect.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that definitely came through, because that's something that I say to my kids all the time. Like, life isn't fair. Not everything's going to be equal. Like, sometimes you're going to mess up, and it's okay. But the important thing is to own that and admit to it and do better next time, because that's really all you can do, because you're going to make mistakes. But you don't want to be so prideful that you can't admit it, or you know, like nobody wants to be around somebody like that.
Yeah, I don't try to allow myself to ever be the victim and have victim mentality. And I try to teach that to my kids as well, or did try to teach it to my kids. So you're not a victim. You're responsible for everything that happens to you, one way or another.
Right.
Whether it's just because you happen to be in the room at the time, but you take responsibility for yourself, because nobody else will. And it's not, if you think, everything's doing it to me. Well, no. Let's think about what happened, and why did it happen. I was doing that with Elias this last couple of weeks. I asked Elias. I said, "Is it true, Elias, as soon as you become a teenager, you lose your brain?"
It is actually.
I know. I think it's one of the requirements of passing in
with last month's socks. But it's true, because whether you cause something that you're dealing with, or you had nothing to do with what you have to deal with, you still have to deal with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It has to be dealt with.
You can't let it rule you. You've got to take it by the horns and move on with it one way or another.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you guys. And Ken, what a treat. We didn't know when you called me from downstairs and you were like, "So we're upstairs." I was like, "Does she have a mouse in her pocket?"
Well, she asked me if I wanted to come, and I go, "Sure, I'll come." I wasn't expecting to be part of this, but it's
there you
okay.
go. Now you're going to be a famous star.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My 2 seconds of fame, or 2 minutes of fame, or whatever it is.
Tanya, I know you shared a lot of really personal and very sad, deep
I
parts.
was fighting back tears, honestly. I'm not lying. I'm just sitting here going, okay, don't cry.
But I appreciate that, because I mean, life isn't easy. And I feel like one of the biggest mistakes that I've made over my 29 years on this earth.
Yeah, me too.
Did you see what I did there? Is just maintaining that kind of plastered smile and a stiff back, and pretended that everything's fine, everything's going to be fine, and it's really not.
Oh, I gave that up a long time ago.
Yeah.
I was like, I think that's why so many people related to me after Michael died. I did a lot of speaking and a lot of traveling, and I was just always very real and very raw and very open about what I'd been through, because I wanted people to remember. I wanted people to remember my story and maybe think twice before they drink and then drive home. So I believe. But
you also wanted to bring about change.
Yeah.
Without dictating.
Yeah.
And that was the way she would speak, because I heard her lots of times. The way she would speak, it was never dictating, but it definitely had the idea of bringing about change.
Taking responsibility.
Yeah.
Probably way more impactful that way too, because if it feels like an argument, then there's a winner and a loser.
Yeah.
Right.
When I testified before the House about one of their committees, I got up there and I was like, I'm not a law enforcement officer. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lobbyist. Like, I don't have numbers for you. All I have is my story and what happened and how it affected me. And I do feel like that was much more impactful, because you start throwing numbers at people and they just kind of, their eyes glaze over.
Right.
But, you connect with them on that level, mother to mother, or, and I think that makes more of a difference. But
yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me, and
Thanks.
my dad. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Right, dinner time.
That's it.
Let's go eat.
Thanks for joining us today. If you want more information about the Growing Gorillas Martial Arts Program for kids, please visit growinggorillas.com.
And if you're interested in finding an SBG near you in the state of Montana, please visit us at sbgmontana.com.
See you soon.
Stay cold, Pony Boy.
Peace out, Girl Scout.
Catch you on the flip-flop.
Catch you on the flipper dipper.
After a while, crocodile.
I don't know anymore.
See you later, alligator.